he invited me out to record one night, and I was like so emotional, and I like put all my heart and soul into this acoustic ballad. And right when I was done, he cuts over the intercom. He's like, "That was beautiful. Now let's try one. Let's try and record one." And I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And he was just messing with me, but it was amazing.
Sorry, man. It was a technical error on this, and we just needed one more go with that.
It's just so obvious. Someone in the back was like, "That want it." I had a moment, Jim, where I put this album on for the first time, and I was walking around Austin on the side of the lake, and the sun was setting, and I'll be honest, I timed it kind of deliberately. I could see the sun was setting from my hotel. I was like, all right, it's a nice time to go listen to the new My Morning Jacket album, and it was so beautiful, and it was so wonderful, and it reminds me how music is such a generous companion.
I love that term, generous companion.
It's there for you when you open yourself up to it. And I feel like your music has definitely been that for me and for many people. So it's great to have you in the studio. And thanks for saying hi, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
When was the last time that you did that? When was the last time you sort of went and put something on kind of with purpose, not just because it was on the radio or whatever, but you were feeling a certain type of way or, yeah, you get it. You just wanted to put something on that kind of embellished your thinking or took you somewhere.
Every day. I mean, I feel like it's always going. I kind of get into this weird repeat mode where if I hear something, well, pretty much like I listen to My Sweet Lord by George Harrison. That's like the only song that I listen to for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I'll like randomly come across a new piece of music or something, and then I'll listen to that for a couple of days. And recently I did ketamine therapy, which was really unbelievable. And there was this song in it that was just like this kind of bubbling synth thing. It was instrumental, and it was really, really calming, and I needed to be calmed. And I mean, I've been listening to that for weeks. It's just helps me so much.
I walked into a hotel room in Melbourne once when I was on tour, when I was a DJ, and it was a nice hotel, and they had this welcoming music coming out of the TV that had these chords in it that I immediately felt mega connected and emotional to.
Yeah.
And I left that welcome music on for 8 hours.
Whoa, that's amazing.
I didn't turn the TV on and do anything else. I just kept it on and just did what I was doing with it on. It was so lovely.
I feel like I always have the opposite reaction. I thought the music coming out of the TV.
It's awful, but I never found out what it was. And to this day, it kind of haunts me in a really lovely way. What was that? I'm going to
give it some more time now when I go into the hotel room later.
Only if it moves you. I mean, this was surprisingly moved me. I've almost, a few years later, I almost called the Crown in Melbourne to ask them, what was that intro music? They would have a fucking clue.
We get so many asks about that welcome music.
I'm interested in the idea of, an enhanced therapy. I do therapy and I love therapy.
Yep.
And I love searching for I love having a safe place to be curious about my own ways of thinking and processing things. What was ketamine therapy like?
Oh my God. Well, yeah, I do EMDR therapy and parts work.
Yep.
And I met a therapist in the pandemic that I've been searching for him my whole life. And so I do regular therapy, and I've tried all sorts of therapy. And ketamine therapy to me is, it's one of the most profound experiences I've ever had, because it reminded me, it like put me back up in the wall of God. Like it put me back up in the ocean of consciousness where I feel like we're all connected in this ocean of consciousness, and we're each a little wave, but we're all part of the ocean. And
we're all energy field, right? We're all in the energy field.
Yeah, and you like return to that energy field in a way that you get a little glimpse of, at least for me, when I meditate or when I play music or when I make love. I feel like there are these states that we get into where we forget the human component and we're God again.
Yeah.
And I feel like the ketamine experience, at least for me, like rocket blasts you up into that wall of God where all of this is forgotten. Like any sense of Jim or any sense of this world or anything, it's all gone. And there's this presence, this consciousness where like I was conscious, but it wasn't Jim. It was like my eternal soul. Yeah. And it was like that energy. And I've just been thinking about that a lot.
Free of identity.
Yes. Just like the most beautiful, pure identity, that I feel like we really all share.
Yeah, shared.
But we're all unique, but we are all the same. You know, it's like the ocean and waves, Brahman Atman thing, that I feel like there is this sense that I'm, as I think about this more and more, that music and love itself are like little hints from the universe that are like, remember your true nature, you know, but we're not supposed to be able to remember it easily, because that's why we come here and take human form to learn more and evolve and learn these lessons and suffer and have victories and love and all this stuff. And I think that's why music is so important, because it's like the invisible architecture that holds up the entire universe. And I think, you know, there's not enough value placed on music. And when I say music, I mean even the birds chirping or whatever, that it holds this whole thing up.
It's frequency more than it is the notes in a way for me now. It's got to a point where I recognize that the feeling I get from music, that the notes and the tools are a way of communicating, but what I'm really locking into is the frequency of feeling.
Right.
It's hitting me a lot more as I move through life, of how I hear it in things that are away from this and radio and all the conventional places I would have heard music. I hear it in so many different places. Hotel room TVs.
Yeah, totally.
How has it, not necessarily the specifics of the ketamine therapy, but going deeper into that curiosity, that desire to kind of go beyond, you know, the surface of our identity and what we're given at birth and who we become. How has it influenced and weaved through your music and your creativity? Because when you start, you're a young person, you just kind of like thrashing and it's all linear and visceral, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? And then you get to a point where you start searching for answers. It's got to come through in the music. I hear a beautiful open album that lets go a lot here.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to let go. I feel like that's the thing. I feel like I've really, really struggled in this world. I've really struggled with depression and self-loathing and self-hatred. And I feel like music was my way of desperately trying to get the world to love me. You know, it's like, please love me. Look what I can do. Look at the tricks I can perform. Please, please, please.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, slowly, you know, only in the last 4 or 5 years have I begun to realize this stuff, that especially in the chaos of the modern world, one thing that no one can take away from me is the love that I cultivate for myself. And no matter what happens in the world, I can build this reservoir of love for myself. And instead of trying to erase Jim or trying to escape from Jim or trying to destroy Jim, like I've spent most of my life doing, if I was like, that's not working. What if we try to turn the other way and we try to love Jim and take care of Jim, heal Jim? And the more I've been trying to do that, the more I've realized that I can actually be of greater service to the world rather than like trying to run from the world or escape from the world. If I'm nicer to myself, I can be nicer to those around me. Yeah. And I can also let go in this new way that's really come through in the music, because that whole quest for love, I had to do everything with the music or it wasn't good enough. I had to produce it, I had to play it, I had to write it, I had to do the guitar solos, I had to do that. You know, like I had to make sure the reverb was right and the microphones were right, every little thing. And the more I've realized that, like, if I take my entire self-worth out of the success or failure of my music career and just try to love myself, then I can realize things like we did with this last record, where we were kind of at this point where we were banging our head against a wall, and we had done 2 full sessions just by ourselves with me producing, and we had some cool stuff, but it was all murky and there was like so many ideas and we weren't really getting anywhere. And there's this idea like, what if we try a producer? What if we try a coach, you know? And oftentimes that's tough too, because a lot of times big name producers come with big egos, you know, and they drag that in there.
Yeah.
But I took some meetings and I met Brendan, and Brendan is so fucking funny because he is like, all he is interested in is the music. Is the tempo right? Is the key right? Is the, you know, are the lyrics right? You know, it's like, and he's a sweet guy. He's a hilarious guy, but it's like, he doesn't need to vibe out with you. It's like this really, really interesting thing where he's like so laser focused on the music. And for us as a band, it was really fascinating because we all like sprung to life because you want to play good for Coach. You know, you're like, I want to do a good job for Coach. You know,
because he's got the playbook in his hand at all times.
Oh my God, yeah, he's seen everybody play. You know, this guy's watched Bruce Springsteen play. You know, it's like, and that kind of, for us, I think really inspired us. And the beautiful thing about him is it wasn't about his ego. It wasn't about this big character that he's building up himself.
He was serving at the altar of the songs.
Absolutely, and he truly was. And I felt you feel that truth when you're with him. And that
The
was
only thing that will ever outlast us all, man, is the music, right? And
Absolutely.
the
Oh my
memories
God.
that we leave behind. And that is the immortality of it all. I was talking to Brian Eno about this the other day because he's created this opportunity through this random generative music thing where he's taken 44 days of ambient music and various ideas he's made over the course of his life, 10,000 plus tracks.
Yep.
And the only way he could ever find where anything was to make it random.
right.
Because you can never
Yep.
order it, so
Yep.
just got to leave it to chance. So he and his friend of his have created this random generator that can just put their various components together and create something new. And ultimately, they can create something new for infinite. Like
Yes.
they can create
Yep.
a new combination of sounds infinitely.
Yep.
And I said, "Is this your immortality play?" And he was like, "Not bad, is it?"
God, his Thursday, you know that piece Thursday, that ambient music piece.
Incredible.
I mean, yeah, his stuff. He really creates music you can live to. You know, like I put on Thursday, and I live. You know, it's like just
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
You know, I understand the thinking that Brendan has, that obsessive desire to want to make sure that the music ultimately exists in its natural habitat and in its finest form. And I also responded to what you were saying, and many will who are listening or watching this, to the idea of control. I mean, it's something that I think, we're born into the desire to control because we're trying to make good on the things we feel we failed at as kids. It's
Yep.
kind of like a
Yep.
simple way I look at it, at least.
Absolutely.
And, you know, when you finally sort of get to a point of letting go, it's amazing how things improve, but there is a difficult transition. Would you say the last album before this was that transitionary moment, or were you still figuring that out when you were getting into this point, the idea of letting go of Jim?
No, I hadn't figured that out yet. I was beginning. It really mostly it began shortly before the pandemic because I had done ayahuasca then, and I had this really beautiful moment where I was holding myself in my arms, and it was this real. And I was like patting my hair back, and I was Jim in 2019, and I was holding Jim in 2019.
Oh my God,
And
this is literally the ayahuasca experience that you would hope you could have.
Oh well, there's all sorts of other stuff that was insane.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. There's a whole lot of other shit, I'm sure, but this is the one that's actually on the can of ayahuasca. Is you holding yourself and it's like, I want that.
Well, it was beautiful because I was holding myself and I was looking into my own eyes, and I was like, Jim, you're too mean to yourself, buddy. Like you got to be nicer to yourself. You gotta take care of yourself. You gotta love yourself. And I'm like, really, Jim? You really mean it? Is that true? Can I do it? And it like gave me this ability to see myself as another person.
Which is so profound. I'm sorry, but I'm just still laughing at the idea of like someone turning around and going, and you too can have that experience with pure ayahuasca.
Dial up now. Only $9.99.
Get to know your younger self and make good with yourself. In fact, make out with yourself if you have to.
Yeah, if that's what you need.
So you come out of that experience, and of course, some of that's going to stay with you, but then the rest of the world is still waiting for you, and you go back to the reality of what it is. So it's still a discipline, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's why I'm definitely not like a do psychedelic drugs and everything is fine.
Right.
But I think if you include them as a piece of your healing with therapy, you know, if you establish this all, and that's what happened for me, is like I had that little chunk with the ayahuasca where it gave me this gift of seeing myself as another person. And I was like, you know, I try to be really kind to like all the people that I encounter or people that I love. And then I treat myself terribly, you know, and I'm so mean to myself and I'm so critical of myself.
It's called being a fixer, I think, is what they term that in therapy. I was one of that. I would be hard on myself, but always ready to fix other people's problems.
Right. But so you having that ability to like see myself as another person was like the beginning of, and then luckily I found the therapist that really worked for me and began my journey or whatever. But yeah, I feel like most of my life, I've been just kind of running, trying to escape this world, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not surprised that you found, you know, an outlet in the arts. I think it's a beautiful, creative way of, look, in the beginning, right? I think you get to play with your identity.
Yeah.
Be something you're probably not.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Enjoy the fruits of that because people like that identity. They're like, I like that, Jim.
Yeah.
How do your band respond to these kind of like adventures, you know? And maybe they're with you, maybe they're beside you having these things, but you know, these are real shared relationships with people, bonds that you have, not just in the studio and on stage, but you can't, you know, this is camaraderie at a high level.
Yeah.
And they see you kind of going and exploring these side of things. And I only ask because sometimes, you know, when someone comes back from that, it changes their life so profoundly. It makes it hard for other people to relate to the person that they got to know in the first place. Like, am I going to like ketamine Jim?
Right.
Am I going to be able to relate to this guy while he's sitting there going, just let go, man. It's not easy for me. I ain't done the K.
Totally. Yeah. Let go, brother. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's a question about band dynamic, you know?
I mean, we're just so blessed. I mean, that's why we're still around. You know, it's been so long. And I feel like there were times where it almost all imploded. There's times where I almost walked away from it or couldn't handle it. And I think most of my life I've been a really terrible communicator because I've been just too lost in everything. And I think I've been trying to communicate better and better and better and encourage them to communicate better with me. So now instead of holding like smoldering resentments or things that are like, the elephant in the room kind of energy that's not being spoken about, if we are like talking to each other, all the energy just dissipates and the energy is clear. And I feel like there's this beautiful thing happening right now where everybody's doing their own healing. It's like everybody is on their own path, and all the other guys have kids except me, so they're experiencing what I'm sure part of what you're experiencing, which I hope I get to experience someday. But there's just this really beautiful sense of enhanced communication, and this sense too of like
real living, right? Real living
and destroying the myth of age. I think when we've seen people like Joni Mitchell or the Rolling Stones or Dylan in recent years, you really see this thing where you really realize like, oh man, like we can keep getting better with age. The more we learn and the more we grow, you see these artists that like,
I love to see it,
dispel the myth of youth. Obviously youth is beautiful too, but our world is so fixated on it. And I feel like there's this thing.
With so much fear, youth, right? What if this all fucking doesn't work out? And how am I even going to get to old age? And am I even going to be mature and all that
I never
shit?
thought I would make it past whatever, not very old.
Yeah. I think with age comes a sense of self-assuredness in your own intentions and desires to do good work and to sort of add value.
Yeah,
to
and
the world.
Peace. I feel like peace is the biggest thing for me, is this enhanced sense of peace that's like really, really just kind of blowing my mind, this sense of peace that I'm cultivating for myself, where it's like nothing can take it away from me. No matter what happens in the outside world, nothing can take away my own love for myself if I, keep cultivating that.
That would have to be a process of separation, because you can't unengage with the world and you can't ignore the thrash that we're presented with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's intense, and I feel the same way. I try to separate myself from my intention to myself and my family, my friends, and then how I choose to engage with the world with some form of control.
Yep.
I hate to use that word, but it's the only one I can think of, because it's also out of my control. The only thing I can do is, how do I engage with it, absorb, translate, and react?
The thing that I'm trying to do is
Does that make
avoid.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. I've been thinking about this so much. I think we all are. And there's this great Darth Vader effect happening right now that I think everybody's forgetting about, where it's like the Emperor or Darth Vader in Star Wars is saying to Luke, yes, get angry.
Yeah.
Yes, get angrier.
Yeah.
Kill him. And that enhances the anger, and it's so crazy, and it's amplifying everything. And there's this thought I keep having where it's like, okay, if I neutralize my anger towards anybody, because you think about all of the political stuff, all of the chaos that's going on, this is all born from somebody not dealing with their problems and somebody not loving themselves, and somebody refusing to face reality and refusing to take the truth.
It's all fear mechanics.
It's all fear mechanics. So if we disable that at our source, if I say, no matter what you do to me, I'm not going to respond to you with hatred or fear. And what I'm going to do is take action for the causes that I care about.
That's right.
I'm going to donate to those causes. I'm going to play benefit for those causes. I'm going to
Grassroots.
do whatever. Yeah, do literal things rather than fighting with somebody on Instagram about it. I'm going to do literal things in the world to support the organizations I care about, to work for the organizations I care about. And I'm not going to fight with anybody anymore.
Well, because what you're doing by doing that, and we're doing by doing that, because I agree with you, and it's amazing how quickly that thought came to me when I realized the system would not be at my disposal anymore.
Right.
Maybe it never was, but it certainly isn't, even from a sort of illusionary level right now for the foreseeable future. I was like, but I still want to contribute. I still want to act. I still want to do my bit. And it was very clear to me, like you, the pathway, which was like, to put it through modern terminology, I'm going to be a bit more micro about this.
Yeah.
Because the macro is just like where a lot of the base level frustrations and angers, and I still feel that. I still have those moments.
Absolutely.
But I can't let that dominate, because I'm not going to get enough done.
Yeah.
There.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're going to get sucked into the Darth Vader effect.
Yeah. Hate
your
myself
anger and
because I'm-
hatred is going to amplify it all.
Yeah.
And that's the craziest thing about all that stuff. That just results in more clicks and more ad dollars and stuff. And the whole thing is just, it's happening in this way where it's like, we got to wake up from this. And I think the thing that everybody is missing, myself included, until just recently, is like, everybody's forgetting about themselves. So like, take the time, love yourself, like check in with yourself, get real with yourself, get right with yourself. And then you kind of see other people and all these people that you...
The reflection is pure.
Yeah, and you think you hate these people so much, but if you can see them with compassion
Yeah.
and see the people that you disagree with and be like, oh man, they are filled with so much self-hatred and so much fear.
Yeah.
They're trying to fill it with all this external validation, you know, and you really start to see that with people. And again, you don't condone their actions or whatever, but you can at least have mercy that I really feel like begins to spin the wheel in the direction you want it to spin.
Well, two things can be true. You can hold people accountable for what they do and at the same time not absorb the behavior and let it kind of sort of poison your own sense of what's possible.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that's most upsetting, and where an album like this shows up at just the right time. Because like any great record, Jim, and any great Mind Morning Jack record, there's complexities in the writing and there's lots of things that people can take from it. It's not just a singularity, but there is a sense of like searching to be free of the toxicity of things. You know what I mean? I get a sense of that, like out in the open, like just let me be free of it to be able to find out what it is I really feel.
Yeah.
And not be influenced by all these auxiliary things. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's part of that. I think everybody knows the feeling of telling the truth can be scary sometimes. Being your true self can be really scary.
Yeah,
you know, like coming out into the open can be really scary. But once you do,
I'm free.
So free. Such a relief. You know, I always think of my brain like the famous Apple rainbow wheel that spins when your computer has too many programs open. You know? It's like I've got rainbow wheels spinning, and it's like the more I get right with myself and the more false programs I start to shut down, my computer is running clean, you know, and the rainbow wheel's not spinning anymore. And it's like, you know, that kind of feeling.
Did you love being in the studio? We talked a little bit about this before with Brendan's influence, but did you love just being able to perform these songs that you've written with the band and not be so particular about the overall? I know you love the sound design of things, and you're responsible for the sound we've fallen in love with. And what's amazing is that how present that sound is here.
That's again another testament to Brendan, because Brendan really respected our sound and really respected my wishes and stuff. But yes, it was such a relief to just let go and trust that I don't have to micromanage everything. You know, it's like there can be times where Brendan and Carl or Brendan and Bo or Brendan and whoever are working on something, and I can trust that it's going to be fine. You know, I can go over here and work on my lyrics or take a walk around the block or whatever instead of being over there like, where's the mic right? There's the mic preamp right? You know, it's just like, geez, you know, like I've been stressing myself out so much. And at the same time, it's like, I also have compassion for that old Jim, because I don't regret anything either. And I'm so grateful for all the life I've had and all the work
the
I've
learning
done.
for sure.
But seeing that now, though, I'm just like, it is a huge relief.
So what does the era of no feel like now when you're not saying no to yourself, when ultimately it falls at your discretion because you're kind of across all of it? You're only having a conversation with yourself. You come back from a walk and Brendan's done something that you're unsure about. Some of the other guys may be excited about. This is just a part of human experience.
Yep.
How do you now? How has communicating changed for you now that you actually have to learn how to communicate with someone else? And say, I'm not sure about that.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I've noticed is that I try to give things a little more time than I used to.
Because immediately
give it a beat. Yeah, let it sit there, because you can change it later in half an hour or whatever.
Quick question: do you still get the fire in your belly whilst you're giving it a beat? Like, I'll do that. I'll still get the feeling.
Yeah.
But rather than react to the feeling, I'll let the feeling sit.
Well, surprisingly, it was so interesting, because I thought I would get that feeling a lot. That was one of my biggest fears before we started working with Brendan. I was like, oh man, what if I come into the control room every day and I'm like, but I don't want to say anything because I don't, you know. And ultimately, we all talked about this as a band, and we were like, listen, if this doesn't work out at the end of the day, it's not going to work out.
Yeah,
you know,
it's fine.
And it'll be a huge, colossal waste of money. And
Pearl Jam album.
Like, yeah, exactly. But it's like, but luckily that didn't happen that much. And I realized the more and more, because that's the funny thing too about records, even when I was trying so hard to micromanage and force everything, at the end of the day, the record makes itself. It always does. And you always think song A is going to be the greatest song on the record, and it doesn't even work. It doesn't even make the record. You know, and idea X29 or whatever that was only a 30-second idea turns into the best song on the record. Yeah, and the more I've realized that if I can just let go and just the universe will keep speaking, and I'll keep showing up to serve it.
Yeah.
If I can keep showing up to serve every moment, it's going to keep drifting through, and the things that are meant to work out are going to work out, and the things that aren't. And all I can do, and it has given me so much more peace of mind to like show up, and right now I'm going to sing. I'm not going to worry about the microphone. I'm not going to worry about the preamp. I'm not going to worry about what's going on in the world or whatever. I'm just going to try and sing or play guitar, whatever it is.
Oh, there you go. Okay. You haven't got all these other things that are going on in your brain that are distracting you from that pure intention of trying to perform what you feel. So shit, if I was a betting man, I'd assume this was the most enjoyable, wild record you've ever made because you're just tapping in with very little going on around you.
It was so enjoyable. Yeah, it's hard to say like more or less or whatever because it's been such a wild journey of recording ever since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I love recording. That's been my one true connection with God or the universe or whatever is music. And even when I was trying too hard or being mean to myself or whatever, there was always that pure entry into the universe through music. I remember getting a 4-track cassette recorder as a kid for the first time, sitting down in my basement and like realizing I could sing with myself, on this recording device, and just like blah. And you wake up and 3 hours are gone, and you're like, whoa, I transcended all of space and time, and so, but the more I feel like I can let go and trust in the people that are around me too, that really opens everybody else up too. The more that we've been together now, this group of My Morning Jacket has been together for over 20 years now, and the band's been over 25. And it's like, and now I've gotten to this place where it's like I really trust these people, and yeah, are we always going to agree? No, but if I trust them to like let it all flow down the path, it's all going to work out. Cause I'll still speak my truth at the end of the day. If this particular thing isn't working for me, I'll talk about it and we'll figure it out, and it'll work itself out.
Wow, man, that's called being present too. And there's a song on here and I'm just taking it from through my filter, that really gets that desire to be present and try not to kind of get swept up in what was and what will be, which is beginning from the ending, which to me is very much about kind of accepting and acknowledging that it's fragile.
Yeah, it's everything is in that cycle. I think about, I was asked to do a song for this movie about a couple that was starting a farm. I forget what the movie was, and I wrote this song for the movie, and it didn't get used in the movie. But I was also thinking about my sister and her husband have an organic farm in Kentucky, and they do all the work themselves, and they're farming, and I mean, farming is like hard work. I mean, that is hard work, but you see.
There's a reason why people make movies about that in the 1700s, the 1800s, the 1900s, and the 2020s, because it is like legitimately, era-wise, the hardest shit.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But obviously, without it, we wouldn't be here. It sustains us all, and seeing just that constant process of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death, and for things to grow, they have to come from
and
old
waste
death.
As well. Waste, just accepting that so much effort's going to be put into something that may not even be usable or transferable.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's crazy. I love the feeling of that song too. Can you just tell us a story about the recording of that? To me, it's got it's kind of a big part of the heart and soul of the record, that song.
Thanks. Yeah, that was an interesting example of a song that wouldn't have been on the record if we didn't work with Brendan, because for this record, I just put all my ideas into the pot. So there were a lot of ideas that I had been working on as solo records, because I'm recording at home all the time. And that song was, I had worked on it for this film. And so I had built a real song, a real recording.
Yeah, because you had to submit it, so it was done.
Yeah. And I had, it was like electronic bass. I do a lot of drum programming and stuff like this. And everybody really liked the song, and Brendan really liked the song. And the great thing about recording, somebody gave me advice a long time ago. They were like, stop making demos. Don't ever make demos again. Just start recording. And that really has helped me so much, because I'll record, and like with this song, we were able to use like all of my drum programming and all of my sound effects and all of these things I'd spent so much time, and all that beginner's magic is there.
So Brendan's not coming into it going like, I'm bringing a level of experience that no matter what you've recorded, I'm always looking to improve it. He's like, it feels good, use it.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. His ego does not get involved at all. Because a lot of people that I have met or worked with would do that.
Yeah,
oh yeah. Totally. And actually he was amazing, because sometimes he would do, even if I didn't think we needed to do it, he'd be like, oh my God, the snare on that crappy basement demo that you all did is amazing in its own way. Let's get that, let's use that. So that was a really fascinating part about, because I love recording and I love getting lost in that void, and a lot of that beginner's magic is in those songs. So we were able to keep that and then come in on top of it, put new ideas on top of it, like it was really, really beautiful.
Oh, I love that phrase, beginner's magic. I've never heard that used before, and it's such a perfect way to sum up that.
Well, it's that Zen beginner's mind thing, whenever we get into a new thing, we're in that beginner's mind, and I think that's part of growing older too, is like, how do we keep finding that beginner's mind over and over and over again? And that's one thing we've tried to do as a band, is like, anytime we record, what can we do differently this time that will get us all engaged like kids again? You're like, oh God, this is so exciting. And that's that beginner's mind thing. I think about it all the time.
So what's been one of, if not still, the hardest habit to break for My Morning Jacket?
Hard habit to break. They
don't make them like that anymore, man. And I never say that phrase.
God, I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm sure we have all sorts of bad habits.
Not even a bad one. It just could be something that's not kind of valid anymore. This idea of like, what something that's been a part of the fabric of the band that just doesn't.
Well, I think all trying too hard at times, because we're all like get into that perfectionist way, and just I think when you try too hard, everybody knows that phrase. Things become too
hot,
forced and hard. It's like, and if the more you can relax and be flexible and be like the grass or be like the wind or whatever, and you gotta move. And I think those are hard habits to break, because you're in the studio and there's so much pressure, and you want this to be the most mind blowing album of all time.
And everyone's standing through the other side, and they were just like listening to it, and there's Brendan over the desk, and it was just like, this sounds great. And then this thing happens where someone starts talking, but you're still recording. They start talking, and it's like. And you're like, oh, I've lost them. Like, I've lost them. It's done.
Yep.
Like, we're cooked.
Yeah, and so you got to like kind of somehow, just stop trying so hard.
That was great, buddy. I wasn't recording. Can we just do one more?
It's like, you bullshitter.
That's what my cousin John did to me the first time I ever recorded at his studio, because he used to be the guitar player in My Morning Jacket, and he had this really cool analog studio, and he invited me out to record one night, and I was like, so emotional, and I like put all my heart and soul into this acoustic ballad. And right when I was done, he cuts over the intercom. He's like, "That was beautiful. Now let's try one. Let's try and record one." And I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And he was just messing with me, but it was amazing.
I mean, I've had that before in studios, so people have literally done that. I'm like, that was a smash. And like,
sorry, man. It was a technical error on this, and we just need one more go at that.
It's just so obvious. Someone in the back was like, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. And what was a song on there that you think is kind of the newest territory for you? The one that really you felt that could be lyrically, performance-wise as a band with Brendan in the environment of making this album, that you were like, okay, this feels really fresh in a good way for us. Like, or at least uncharted territory to some degree.
Well, really nothing in particular, because I feel like that's one thing we've always tried to do, love or hate the band. I think you could agree that we try a lot of things. We're open to any kind of music, any style of music, this or that. And I think this music is this album's kind of the same, because there's, a variety of different styles of songs or whatever. I think just the freshest thing was like everybody letting go, and also it was a simultaneous letting go and this whole coach thing. I'm really like, just have been so blown away by this, because I was never good at sports. I tried sports when I was a kid, but I always, since we worked with Brendan, I always have this feeling like this is what it must feel like to play for a great coach. Because I feel like sports and music it's all the same. It's all that sense of God. When you're watching great sports and it all comes together, it's beautiful. It's like a symphony or a show or anything else. And
it's human excellence, right?
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's everybody entering into that flow state, becoming one with God and love and music and the world. And that whole thing, I think, for us, we'd never done the coach thing before, because I was trying to be the coach. So I'm trying to be the singer and the coach and the guitar player and the songwriter and the producer. It's like,
having been bad at sports when you were a kid. So it's just like,
I wasn't even good at coaching. Yeah. It's so funny. That whole coaching thing for us was just like, it helped.
I get that. I was always very kind of envious when I decided to throw in my athletic ambitions of some of my friends who went on to have slightly longer journeys than I did. And I was like, man, I wish I got to that level, so I'd have gotten that level of support and expertise from a coach that good.
Yes.
Because it's like
Yep.
you got to get to the best to be treated with to work with the best. And I think that's kind of the thing that I was always like, man, I wish I could have had that experience of being taught or living up to someone's expectations that you hold in such high regard.
Yes.
And I actually went on to make music a majority of the time on my own, and I found that really, as satisfying as it was to get a result, I found it very lonely
It can be very lonely. Yeah.
at times.
Definitely.
You obviously did make music on your own as well, not just with the band. Do you seek that solace though, now that you have the comfort of a band?
Well, yeah, I feel like I kind of just naturally go into that solitude, and I love recording so much, and I love doing it at home. So it's funny because I keep trying to get other hobbies like painting or whatever, but it's like just keep coming back to the music, and it's something I just do as if I'm painting or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you like go to make a record or whatever, that's kind of a whole different thing. Because when I'm at home doing it alone, it's like, yeah, I want it to be good or whatever, but I'm not like stressed about it. I'm just kind of creating and going with it. But yeah, it was really interesting to see what it's like to have a coach, like how inspiring, because I had never given us that opportunity, because I thought it wouldn't be good enough if I wasn't the coach too.
Like somebody gets to me and gets through to me in that way, I get quite emotional. Like it's quite an emotional experience. I don't know if you felt that when Brendan would be like really saying, "Hey man, you're onto something here," and it's like you've been the one who's had to do that the whole time. Where you're like, "Oh my god!" Like,
oh my god, it was so emotional and so inspiring, because even when I started working with him, sorting through the demos we already had, just that process made me begin writing more and more songs.
Yeah.
And some of the newest songs that I wrote are some of the coolest songs on the record.
like what? Like give us like what's an example? Of that?
Like Time Waited and Everyday Magic. I
Yeah.
think those were two of the last ones that I wrote. And it was hilarious because when I started working with Brendan, all these songs kept coming out, and he's just so hilariously frank about it all, And I email him one song. I'm like, oh my God, check this out. No response. And then I email him another one, and he's like, oh, this one's pretty good. We're going to have to get rid of something because we just don't have enough time. This is, and that kind of made me so excited. And I also realized for the very first time, I don't have to take it personally. Just because he didn't like song X or song Y,
Yeah.
I can still like it. I
But
can
let's
do it
be
on
honest,
another record.
Let's be honest though, you're still checking your phone for at least a few hours after
Oh,
you
totally.
send
Yeah.
it,
I was
right?
like, I wonder if he just missed the email.
Yeah, maybe he's on the plane.
It's sent.
Maybe he's just taking notes. He wants to be thoughtful. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
I don't
That's
think
great.
you ever shake that, right? You never shake that desire, no matter how much ketamine you do, to sort of
No.
still want the validity of somebody you
Of course.
admire or you appreciating you.
Yeah, absolutely. But there was a really beautiful thing about working with him where as you begin to understand what he loves and what he's looking for, I begun to realize, oh yeah, all these things that he's not responding to, because he's not a big like improv guy or jam guy, or he's not into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I began to realize like a lot of the stuff, or I'd write like more and more ballads, or whatever. And it's like, we don't need more and more ballads for this record or whatever. I began to realize those things where I was like, oh man, this is a great opportunity, Jim, for you to not take this personally. This is like, it was really, really beautiful.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it really was.
That's one of the things I love about MMJ Records is that, you utilize the studio for what it's worth and you really try to capture the song in its essence. And then when it comes to playing live, you have no problem loosening up and being something very, very different.
Yep.
Has it got to the point now, having done that sort of in different ways, and as you pointed out, rightfully so, in different, more innovative ways and interesting ways each time, but that, as you finish these songs in the studio, you're like, okay, my brain now starts to think about what shape this will take when we actually go out and perform in front of people.
Oh yeah, we're always talking about that, and it's funny because by the time you finish the record and the record actually comes out, you've completely forgotten how to play all of the songs.
Yeah. Which is also how you were talking to God too, by the way.
Right.
When you're like, man, what was that? What was that part? I don't even remember writing that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and we got to go through that. We're kind of going through that now. We're like, okay, what were we doing? Where was that? What was that?
Yeah.
And put it all back together again.
Are you excited as you sort of, and I mean this as a mature individual, as you mature in this job and this love for music? How does the kind of idea of travel fit into your life now?
That is actually one thing that's gotten harder, because I feel like the more I've gotten nicer to myself, the more I realize how hard travel is.
It's brutal.
It
on
is
the body.
brutal.
It's brutal on the psyche. It's brutal on the ears.
Yep.
It's brutal, man.
And I realized, like, Patrick and I, our drummer, were talking one morning in the bus after neither of us had slept well, and we were trying to wake up, and I was like, we've been touring for like over 20 years. Didn't we used to sleep on the bus?
Yeah.
And he was like, we were drunk.
Yeah.
And I realized really, oh my God, yeah, because if you you're just passing out every night, and once we're all alcohol sober now,
Yeah.
and which has felt so great and been such a journey for me, because I'm an alcoholic.
How long now?
Over 2.5 years.
Amazing.
for me.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it's been such a journey and so beautiful, but it's so much harder to sleep on the bus.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
it's
of course, because all the things
oh.
that you attach to alcohol too, and this is one of the things I'm scaling back too. My drinking to the degree only weekends now, so I'm hitting there, and I guess over time. But but it's interesting for me is that like all the things that I used to attach alcohol to.
Yep.
I'm like, shit, am I going to enjoy that?
Yep.
Am I going to actually be able to? And for you, it must have been very, very vivid because the idea of what's a show going to be like.
Well, I never drank before shows, so that was one thing that didn't change.
Okay.
Because I'm a very, very, I'm a very, very high functioning alcoholic, very
Right,
work based.
right.
From my dad, that's a very strong work ethic, and
Right.
so I was never drinking before shows or anything. But yes,
What about
the whole
after the
world.
show?
Oh yeah, absolutely. After the show. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, I recognized I was like this salivating dog, and all I could think about was that next drink.
You're 3 songs before the end of the show, and you're like, can't wait to pop that.
Yeah,
flash.
totally.
dude,
Totally.
I've been
Oh my
there.
God. And when you realize that's running your life,
Yeah,
when I realized that, and I realized that many times over my life, but couldn't get over it.
yeah.
And then once I realized like that I needed to address, I couldn't complain about anything else in my life, about any of my problems or my unhappiness, or I'm not peaceful, I don't know why, if I keep drinking myself to death.
It's a powerful observation, but was there a singularity involved in the thinking that made you realize that? Was there a moment? Like I can remember the exact moment I chose to stop smoking cigarettes, like literally the exact second. Did you have that moment with drinking?
No, it's just more culmination. I feel like it was just like one more morning that I woke up so hungover, and so I had to go try and function in the world. And I think it was great because I had started with my therapist, and I had been with him for a year or two before I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
And he was great about it. He was never like, you got to stop drinking. He was always treated it very neutrally. He's like, yeah, that's tough.
That's good therapy work, Jim. That's what that is. That's good therapist. Right?
Yeah, well, it really was.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I finally got to that point where I told him one day, I was like, I think I'm going to try, I always preface it like that. Even now, it's like, I will never claim that I've stopped drinking
Yeah, of
forever
course.
because it's a lifelong, who
Of
knows.
course.
But I told him, and he's like, that's great, man. He's like, try it, and just remember, be kind to yourself. If you fall off the wagon, try again. Like just keep trying again. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't make it one more thing that you have to beat yourself up again about. You know what I mean? And that was like, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, because that's a big part of it. I think this self-sabotage is all wrapped up in that. I think
Oh,
the idea
God,
of trying
absolutely.
and failing really is about getting back to that comfortable space of knowing that you're not good enough.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I drank. I wanted to escape this world because I felt like I wasn't good enough. And it was a, one-way ticket out of the world. You hand
Yeah.
it the keys and
Yeah.
it drives the car.
And then guess what? You wake up the next morning feeling shit and you're not good enough for the world.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You're even worse.
So
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like,
It compounds.
can we talk about writing love songs?
Yeah.
Great. I mean, first of all, I want to ask you, like, who are some of the great writers of love songs for you? Who sets the bar for you? Who writes a beautiful love song for you?
I get a little confused about the particular songwriters of different Motown songs. 'Cause I feel like Motown for me,
Or we can just do songs, and then
Yeah.
people can search we can figure out the writers.
like Your Precious Love, that Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell song
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, that song, I mean, just sweeps me away.
Yeah.
Or like a devotional love song like My Sweet Lord,
Yeah.
or like Alice Coltrane's music, her devotional music, where
Yeah.
she is singing to God and
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it is like,
It's away from all earthly concerns. Yeah. And human
well, it's
concerns.
crazy though, the love you hear in her voice when you put on an Alice Coltrane record, and like I've got the sub turned up, and there's this record, the latest record that they put out, it's just her and the organ singing these devotional songs. And you've got the stereo turned up, and her organ, the bass on it is just like restructuring your entire physical body, and her voice is like so loving and so huge, but she's singing about Hindu names of God and stuff that you don't necessarily know exactly what she means, but you just feel the love in this pure way where there's no English language meaning to it.
Yeah.
Because I love a good love song where you understand what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've also been really into this idea of like the force of love through devotional or religious music, where for me it's easy to remove the meaning of any particular deity, or whether it's Jesus or Krishna or whatever. I can kind of forget about those beings or those deities and just feel the force of God as love, you know, through somebody.
Yeah, well, because the idea of singing about love between two people needs to be a little bit more direct in order for people to appreciate and absorb it, right? It loses some of that like magic of the universe that you can put into things that are not earthly, that are ultimately intangible. It's got to be tangible. It's got to be like, I love you, babe. I love you, babe. So how do you get past that poor impression of a love song and get to a place where you know you've written a good one, because you've written some great ones? And I mean,
thanks.
are they harder in some respects, not to create a hierarchy about what's more challenging than others, but going through the motions of trying to explore a feeling of sadness or of pain versus something of absolute devotion to another person or to a relationship? Are they different rather than challenge? Yeah, are there different challenges to each one?
It really is, but I think it's like I owe it to all of the amazing partners that I've ever had, you know, or all of the people that I've shared love with, because those are the most profound experiences that I've shared with people on this world, you know, other than making music, you know, because that's all kind of in the same vein to me. But when I think about love, I think about how much I hated myself and how much my love was trying to love other people from this place where I hated myself. And I would accept things that weren't right for me, or, you know, like this, you're on this crazy path. And then I feel like the more you can try to love yourself, the more you can try to be open to like true experiences that are probably more aligned with what you need or what, you know. So I have to get away from the world a lot to like write or think or whatever. But then I feel like I tend to work better when I'm actually living in the world, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. So, but that's a case of absorbing and then translating, right? What you're saying is, you know, you're kind of working when you're out in the world as it is, but then when it's time to go away and figure out what your thoughts are, you tend to want to remove yourself, if I'm hearing you correct. What is that process like? What does that entail? How deep does the removal go? Like
total immersion.
So how deep does it sort of go for you when it's time to kind of go away? Like, do you go deep?
Yeah, it's kind of more a daily thing, because I really feel like I've never felt at home in this world, and I've never really felt like I belong in this world, and only recently have
Wow, since when? Can I ask? Sorry to interrupt.
Since I was born. I mean, I think that's a deep part of our genetic code and a deep part of depression, and I just always remembered feeling like I just don't belong here. Like this feels wrong to me. Like there's like something is wrong about being here. And so, you know, as a teenager, that turns into extreme depression and teen angst and all that stuff.
Your feelings for sure.
And then once I discovered alcohol, that was my main way of blotting it all out, so I didn't have to feel it for a night or whatever.
Yeah.
But and part of that for me was when I found music. That was my removal from the world, because I was like, I don't have to be in the world. I can be here with my guitar. I can just play music. I can just you know, be here. And it was funny, because then when I tried to use that for acceptance in the world at first, all I ever got was no. You know, oh, you suck. This sucks. This band sucks. You know, it's like that's all I ever got for the longest time. But then at a certain point, though, it's wild as you learn, like as we got a little bit of success, I would be like, somebody would be like, this band is great. This record is great. And my ego would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Maybe I'm not so bad after all.
Right.
And then another person would be like, this record's terrible. These people suck. And I'd be like, oh, maybe I am so bad.
See, what you probably did with that point was you were just going back to the child. You were going straight back to where you felt uncomfortable in the first place. And then you were getting your first taste of what it was to be even noticed.
Right.
And it's like, holy shit.
Right.
This feels good. This feels bad. This feels good. This feels bad. This feels good. This feels bad.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think then once I started to learn that I'm always going to get everything from the universe, you know, whenever we put out a record, it doesn't matter. Somebody is always going to say, this record sucks. These guys are terrible. And then somebody's also hopefully going to be like, I really like this record. This is really good. And once I realized that, it was really freeing. And now when I try to remove myself from the world, it's more of just kind of like a piece or a necessary meditation. It's not so much an anger or sadness
or even
anymore.
a process or a tool.
Yeah, I just like work on music, or I meditate, or whatever. It's like, so I feel like I do spend a lot of time alone, and I really need that.
Have you ever sort of explored what impression your spirit would get from this feeling of feeling out of place from a very, very young age? Like, have you explored any sort of spiritual, identified any sort of a spiritual sort of reasoning behind that?
Oh, I have. I've explored it a lot. I think for me, a big part of it was my great grandfather committed suicide long before I was born, and he actually committed suicide while my grandmother was pregnant with my mother. And I feel like we were raised Catholic, and when you're raised Catholic, there's always this sense that he's a sinner, he's gone to hell. We don't talk about him. He's exiled from the family. There's this great sin, and that's kind of what I was told all the time. When I was younger, not from my mom, because she was sweeter about it, and she's like, yeah, it's a very sad thing, and your grandma's really...
She's breaking the cycle, so yeah.
She's trying to, but I realized through him, he kind of kept, because his name was James too, and he was a musician, and I guess he was a failed musician or whatever. Nobody really knew the true story of his suicide or anything, but I kept feeling him talking to me when I was a kid. Like, I kept feeling him trying to reach me, so I kind of I thought about him all the time, and I used to draw this symbol on my arm, which was like a guardian angel, kind of in a stick angel form and marker, because I would think about him, and then I got this,
and that image came to you instinctively.
I was just like thinking about him as this angel that's kind of, he's looking out for me, and he's trying to get me to not go down the same path he did.
Wow.
And I feel like once I started doing EMDR with my therapist Tim, we were talking about my great grandfather, and I just had this beautiful voyage where I found his death certificate, and I found his grave, and I went to visit his grave, and I did all this ancestral healing with him. I did family constellation work where I found his soul, and I welcomed him back into the family. And I told him, I was like, "You're not a sinner. You haven't. We love you. I love you. You're forgiven. You're not exiled. And kind of brought him back into the family. And then I did this EMDR work that was unbelievable, where there's this process where you draw with crayons to kind of activate the child part of your brain. And he showed me, like, as I was drawing, like, why he had been contacting me, because he really wanted me to break this cycle of like what he had experiencing and what I was kind of set up to experience again. If I didn't deal with my depression and deal with this thing, I really felt like somehow he spoke to me through the cosmos or through the universe or whatever. And I really feel like I've started to break that cycle. I really feel like that kind of ancestral healing, ancestral family thing. Because I really think when we choose to take this form, we're choosing to learn certain lessons. But that field that we're all a part of, that cosmic field, it's like my great grandfather's part of that too. And there's something that like he goes into this body and I go into this body, and there's this thing we need to work out here, and it's like that. And we're not supposed to be able to understand it. It's so huge and so vast, but in my barely attempting to grasp it, it's like that for me has felt so real.
You're never going to be able to grasp this in your lifetime, but what you can do is break the cycle. You can do the work, which is what it is, to better understand what it means to you, so that you can make peace with it and ultimately share that peace and not the legacy as it stood before you were born.
Yes.
And that's the key, is it not?
Absolutely. Shift the energy. Yeah.
Man, like the other day I was doing acupuncture and a fucking eye in my head opened up and I saw a whole lot of faces, really old bearded men. It was super strange. And when I finished, I said to my acupuncturist, I saw really vivid, like some of them were photos that were that clear. She was like, old bearded men? I said, yeah. She was like, yeah, I've had that before. I think it's ancestors.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. Did you feel that connection? Did you feel like
yeah, but they were super like, I knew it was old because they were stern. You know how like all photos everyone used to be like this?
Right, yeah.
Like it's like you could be having the greatest garden party in the early 1900s, like the best time ever. Okay, photo time.
Yep, totally.
No one ever fucking smiled ever for any reason.
The pressure. Can you imagine back then? Because that's like you had this one chance to get your picture taken.
That's it.
And you didn't want to mess it up. And you're like, okay.
Exactly. And by the way, everything and everyone around you is probably going to try and kill you. I feel like in the 1800s, everything was dangerous.
Oh my God.
Dude, I can't believe our time is up. I feel like we're just getting started. Can we do this again sometime?
Please, yeah.
I know you don't sign up to do interviews. You make beautiful, beautiful albums, and I love my morning jacket, but
Thank you
any
so
excuse
much.
to get a hang in again, man.
I'd love to.
What a joy.
Thank you.